Hello and welcome to my latest career video. This video, on my mission to rebuild my playlist and go beyond where I was, is featuring, former coloured heavyweight champion Denver Ed Martin. So when we look at Denver Ed Martin's main career opponents, we see he's on one slide. He did have a short career, 40 fights, fought across a lot of years, a large time span. So for his time, like Corbett, Jeffries, certain other fighters, a very small career for the amount of years he was actually a professional. But he did cram a lot of tough work in that small fight number. So we begin with Bob Armstrong, the king of the battle royales. Bob Armstrong was fought by Denver Ed Martin 5 occasions. Denver Ed Martin scored 2 wins with 2 losses and 1 draw. He also twice fought former coloured heavyweight champion, very tough fighter, good puncher, Frank Childs. Denver Ed Martin beat him 2 times from 2, and he twice fought the Galveston Giant Jack Johnson, losing both fights. Now his biggest fight series, aside from Bob Armstrong, was against heavyweight power puncher Sam McVeigh. Now Denver Ed Martin fought him on 4 occasions, scoring 1 win with 3 losses and no draws. He also scored 2 wins over former coloured middleweight champion Frank Craig, and lost to an in prime and in devastating form Harry Wills, getting knocked down, if I remember, 6 times in 2 minutes 55 or 2 minutes 53. But yeah, Wills was in devastating form that night. Next up is Charlie Stevenson. Denver Ed Martin defeated him, and he also defeated Klondike Haynes before also then defeating Hank Griffin, a fighter who always gave Jack Johnson some good tussles. He also beat Sandy Ferguson, heavyweight contender, and defeated heavyweight contender at 1910's Gunboat Smith. Good evening, Martin. I hope you're well, mate. I'm a bit bloated. I've just had a takeaway. Just had a lamb korma with a 12-inch garlic bread supreme and a naan bread with me curry. I'm really bloated. I'm trying to talk. He defeated Gunboat Smith. He also fought and lost to Tom Cowler before also defeating Tiny Jim Herman. So from Denver Ed Martin's small career of only 40 fights, there's 23 fights listed there, which is a very high percentage of his career. Now Denver Ed Martin scored 13 wins with 9 losses and 1 draw from those main opponents. And when we go on to his stat slides, Denver Ed Martin scored 16 knockouts in his career, 9 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 3 of them in the first round. Denver Ed Martin also scored 2 KOs against champions, 0 KOs against Hall of Famers, and 2 KOs against pound-for-pound fighters. And Denver Ed Martin scored 0 knockouts against rated fighters, of course, being pre-rating era. Now in rounds boxed, Denver Ed Martin fought 210 rounds professionally, which again is not a lot. When you look at many fighters from his era, fought well over 1,000 rounds, many of them, but only 210 rounds. That's kind of less than a top-level fighter now would fight career rounds. Now, he fought 57 title fight rounds in that short career, and a full half of all of those rounds he fought as a professional were fighting champions at 105. Denver Ed Martin also fought 54 rounds against Hall of Famers and 61 rounds against pound-for-pound fighters. Now, he fought a rated fighter, and only fought 1 round against him, the aforementioned 1-round destruction and demolition job put on him by Harry Wills. So he also fought 1 round against top 3 fighters and 0 rounds against ring champions. So when we go on to the champions, Denver Ed Martin from his 40-fight career had 16 fights against champions, so over 40%. Now against those champions he had a record of 7 wins, 8 losses and 1 draw. He defeated 4 individual champions. They were Bob Armstrong, Frank Childs, Sam McVeigh and Frank Craig, and he scored knockout or stoppage over 1 of those individual champions, the aforementioned Frank Craig. And when we go on to Hall of Famers, we see Denver Ed Martin had 7 fights against Hall of Famers, including 1 win, 6 loss and no draws. The individual Hall of Famer he defeated was the mighty puncher Sam McVeigh. However, he did not score a knockout win over him, but he did suffer some knockout defeats to Sam McVeigh, as you'll see on McVeigh's video. So, on to the pound-for-pound opponents now. Denver Ed Martin had 9 fights against pound-for-pound fighters, with a record of 3 wins, 6 loss and no draw, and he defeated 2 individual pound-for-pounders. They were Sam McVeigh and Frank Craig, and he scored knockout over 1 of them individually, the same champion he stopped, Frank Craig. So there's his kind of niche opponent breakdowns covering Champions Hall of Famers Pound for Pounders. When we look at his record against rated fighters, obviously pre-rating era, not much here, just the defeat to Wills. So he's got a record of no win, 1 loss, no draw against top 10 fighters and top 3 fighters. Of course, he's had no fights against ring champions, and thus he has beaten 0 rated fighters, and 0 rated fighters have been knocked out individually. So when we go on to his title fight record now, Denver Ed Martin, had a record of 8 world title fights in total. He had a record of 5 wins, 3 loss, no draws. And from those title fights, he did make 4 title defences, and he scored 2 title fight KOs. Now, wins against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters and ring champions, obviously non-existent due to being pre-rating era. But he has scored 5 wins against champions. So every fighter he beat in a title fight was against a past, present or future champion. That's quite impressive. All 5 wins were against champions. He scored 0 wins against Hall of Famers in title fights, and he did score wins against 2 wins against pound for pounders in title fights. So not the biggest title fight record, but when you add to his overall career, again, his title fight record amounts for 20% of his career. His fights against champions, just over 40%, if I remember correctly, of his career. So even though he had a short career over a lot of years, he did cram a lot of tough fights in. You think about 5 fights with Bob Armstrong, the fights with Johnson, the 4-fight series with Sam McVeigh, fighting Hank Griffin and fighting the other fighters he fought. He fought a lot of tough fighters. Frank Childs was a good puncher, a very strong fighter. So he did fight a lot of tough fights in that period. But it still surprises me that in his time, I know there are reasons for it, but his fights were over such a long period of time. Fighting for coloured heavyweight title in early 1900s and fighting Wills when he did, it's quite incredible, really. He fought across that time and just had those fights. But, the same thing goes to James J. Corbett, who fought for a lot of years, but yet has a very small career. So he spent half his time fighting exhibitions, etc., etc. So there are always reasons, but it still surprises me when I see these really small careers in this time when fighters were fighting every week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes. So on to the final slide. Titles won. Now, Denver Ed Martin did capture the coloured heavyweight title. Of course, he was never lineal champion nor undisputed champion. But what Denver Ed Martin is my third fighter, to join my playlist. I'm back up and running. It's kind of like riding a bike. Once you've done it, you never forget. I'm talking like I've been off YouTube 5 years. But yeah, I'm back in zone now, so, videos will go on, and this time I can just chill out and keep them going and going and going until I finish my goal of having over 1,000 career videos, which will be quite an accomplishment. So I will leave it there. Shorter video, not as much information on some of the slides as others, like Langford slides that were very packed. But this is nature at beast. Every fighter, I've always said, every fighter's career has differences to other fighters in one way or another. Many similarities in cases, many differences in others. So each video length will be really determined by the information I have to convey. When I get to a fighter who has 3, 4 or 5 main opponent slides, rather than Denver Ed Martin who has 1, Langford who had 3, then it takes longer because I've got to go through all the major fights. So that means I've got to go through Rosenblum's again. He had all them slides full. It's crazy. But we'll get there. So anyway, I will take leave now. Big shout out to Martin. Good to see you, buddy, as always. I'm the Boxing Librarian. More videos coming. Over coming days. All deserve a mention, BL. Yes, absolutely. And one of the reasons, Martin, why I decided not to do the smaller videos were 4 slides and go back to these, which are a bit smaller than what I was doing on my other channel, as you can tell. But I've conveyed the main information I want to convey. So the videos are still quite long, a lot of different slides, just not quite as many as when I went Manic last time. And that's down to Antonio Mosley, because I remember he left me a comment, Antonio Mosley, saying, it's good that you're recognising all the other fighters that fought, because other people only talk about the Hall of Famers, really. He said something, but he mentioned people mention the Hall of Famers, but don't mention all the other guys they fought. So that's why I decided, no, I can't do them small videos. I've got to keep breaking down the main opponents on the main opponents slide, just to convey that proper story of the resume kind of thing. So big shout out to Antonio Mosley for that. That made me think, you know what, no, I've got to have those opponent slides in, because it's the best way people can really look at a resume and look at it through and see who they were successful against, who they lost to, who they had big fight series against. That captures that, because if someone goes back and pauses on those slides, they can look and think, right, he fought him, who were he? Oh, he beat him 3 times out of 3, who were he? It just gives that ability to judge a resume better. So yeah, so big shout out to Antonio Mosley for that. Big shout out to Martin, big shout out to Scrapbook Random, everyone else. I'm on the move again, and I will continue like a machine until my job is done. So I'm out for now. Take care.